Welcome, Spartans, to Podcast Evolved, your favorite Halo podcast. I'm your host, Oran, and today we have another very special interview for you to listen to. Joining myself and Krysta today is Andreas LaTourrette, who is a technical artist at FALCON'S creative group in Orlando, Florida.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. Krysta, you're here as well.
I'm here as well.
Krysta and I were able to go to Outpost Discovery, and Andreas and his team at FALCON'S creative group designed some of the experiences in there. And so we're going to kind of just talk about what they did for Outpost Discovery and kind of what Andreas did maybe specifically, and hopefully get some insight as to the creative process, because this Halo and fan event is very different than some of the other entertainment mediums that we've consumed as Halo fans, and so it's a very interesting perspective that Andreas has gladly been able to share with us. So to kind of give a brief intro, FALCON'S creative group is one of the many partners that 343 Industries and Hershen Live collaborated with to produce the Halo Outpost Discovery. And most notably, FALCON'S creative group designed the ring experience attraction, as well as engineered sound and audio and some video elements throughout the event. And so to kind of take a small step back, Andreas, and kind of kick things off, can you kind of talk with us a little bit at a glance of what FALCON'S creative group kind of is as a sort of entertainment company and design company, and what your role is there?
Absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, FALCON'S creative group, we deal in the themed entertainment industry. We're kind of a multi-tiered firm. We do full theme park design, master planning, and we also do digital media as well. So we're kind of a one-stop shop for all your needs. I'm part of the interactive team. So whenever a theme park needs an interactive element, something to play, something to touch and experience, I figure out the technology behind that alongside my the team members that I'm with, and it's always a good time.
Can you describe some of those projects that FALCON'S creative group has kind of released out there that maybe has those types of interactive elements that might be different from what you've used, or maybe what's more typical from FALCON'S creative group?
Absolutely. So we worked on a location-based experience in New York Times Square with a National Geographic called Ocean Odyssey Encounters, I believe. Basically, it's a virtual way without using a VR headset to experience the ocean and learn about ocean conservation. And I worked on several different interactive games that kind of teach you about coral life and how we can better preserve it and stuff like that.
Interesting. So is that like a kind of a booth and stuff to kind of set up with your VR sort of experience?
Yeah, it's kind of, how do I explain this? So location-based entertainment is a new word you're going to hear more in the industry, where it's kind of smaller, but it's more of a premium experience at the same time. So you're getting the highest possible quality media shown to you. And there's dome films that are stereoscopic 3D. There's rooms full of different games that you just kind of walk up to and use new technologies. Like we used motion trackers and stuff like that, and touch screens and audio visual inputs. So it's kind of a long experience that takes over an hour to do, and you see a lot of really cool stuff.
It's very interesting. How does like the growing trend of technology, I guess, since you use a lot of technology in sort of your experiences, do you have, I guess, technology engineers, for lack of a better word, to kind of find these new and growing immersive experiences that you guys kind of play around with to see what kind of the next new way to experience something is? Yeah,
that's primarily what the interactive team does. We not only create the final experiences, but we also R&D brand new upcoming technologies that we discover either just by looking them up or going to different trade shows throughout the year and getting to talk directly to the manufacturers. We also develop things in-house, and definitely check out our website for more information on our proprietary technology in the upcoming months. But for sure, yeah, it's just a constant game of what's crazy and how does it work and how affordable is it.
Yeah, and kind of like how many things you can throw at the wall in different ways to see, what the different sort of experiences are. It's very interesting.
Exactly.
How long do these, maybe not exclusive to the Halo one just yet, but like, an average project life cycle, how long does that take to kind of produce from when maybe your producers kind of start the initial conversation to when it's actually on the show floor, to give people kind of an idea of the longevity?
Now, this is a cool question because it's so very varied. Sometimes a theme park from beginning to end or an experience can take up to 4 years from the inception. And sometimes it's been growing and gestating for even longer than that. And then sometimes the turnaround can be 6 months. So it really varies, but there's always something going on and always multiple projects kind of coming in and out and being filtered in, and it's a fun challenge to always jump in and jump out of these new and interesting experiences.
Yeah, that's one thing that I just don't think some fans just really understand, that aren't able to kind of experience the behind the scenes in that regard, is that some of the elements in Outpost Discovery took, years of planning and like you said, kind of R&D. And so even on the sort of bigger scales, or even on a more concentrated scale, like depending upon what you're doing, like these things, just like making a video game, it really takes a lot of time and a lot of dedication from multiple people to put these things together. So, but yeah, I definitely recommend our listeners, if you want to learn more about Falcon's Creative Group, check out their website and kind of the portfolio that they have on there. You can really pour in a lot of time just kind of reading about the different experiences that they have in their catalog, and it's very interesting to kind of learn more about it. Thank you very much.
Of course.
So to kind of dive into Outpost Discovery, Halo Project, big fan event, hoping it becomes annualized as I think the goal, at least in the short term or long term, is for 343. Did you join the Outpost Discovery project since the beginning, or were you kind of brought in later on to kind of do more of your focus interactional based production?
So we've actually established a relationship with Microsoft for some time now, and I think that's just kind of where our name got brought up, because they already knew who we were, and Hershend already knew that we were familiar. So we actually got on the project pretty early on. We have a podcast that we do where you can hear a lot more details from our actual Cecil Magpuri, who runs the company, and how he came into contact with 343, and that's a really interesting story. But yeah, it was very early on because they knew they needed all the pieces to come together as soon as possible, because it wasn't going to be a small undertaking at all.
Yes, and even though we'll talk about the core ring experience, but doing kind of audio and visual components that is seen throughout the event, like I imagine that a lot of those types of aspects for the event need to be handled pretty early on, because then that influences how the rest of kind of the show is kind of implemented.
Absolutely. Every single piece, like you said, influenced and had some sort of effect on the other. We needed to know what kind of props were going to be on the show floor physically, so we could write dialogue and narrative around those props and know exactly what the guest was going to be experiencing in that moment. So it's super important.
Kind of going off of that, one of your partners, the lead writer, Abhinav Narayan, you guys created the characters, or at least helped design characterizations of Gabriela, the AI, the AI, and wrote all their dialogue that's at the event, as well as produced those videos and kind of casted those actors, not only her, but then the other sort of Marines that kind of give you those safety videos and things.
Yeah.
Did you do the projection of her as well at the very beginning?
Yes, we did.
Oh, that was so cool.
Awesome.
So, like, what are those beginning stages like for that type of development? I guess not necessarily the creative side of it, for, like, in terms of like Halo universe, but more of just like conveying like that safety information and like making it engaging for the guests. Yeah,
so that was a really interesting thing, and those are two actually. I'm glad you brought both up. The Gabriela and the different instructors that you meet are kind of two different processes, because one was a character that was established. They knew exactly what she was supposed to be and how she was supposed to be. Then we gave her more life. Whereas the instructors, with all their kind of dialogue, were blank slates. We just knew kind of what they were supposed to be, a captain, a pilot, stuff like that. But from that point forward, we decided, okay, this is the personality that this kind of, person in this military branch would have just to start out with. Now, how do we use Halo to make these instructional videos with all the, like you said, the safety features more interesting? So that was really our goal from the get-go, was bring the narrative in at all times, even when there's something that seems quote unquote a little more boring for the guest, but is equally important as learning about, the narrative. So that's kind of where we kind of moved forward from there. I hope that answers your question, but it was like a long process for sure.
Right. And it's my understanding that's more or less the building blocks that you and your team kind of start at when kind of developing these types of.
Absolutely.
Just like the how am I trying to word it? Like the just the emphasis on story, and that's what you're taking the audience and the guests through, and so everything really starts there as kind of your foundation.
Yes.
And like I said, like some of those other portfolios really show kind of how that is just continually built upon. So it's very, very interesting indeed. From sort of the input side of it and working with 343, was there, I imagine there was quite the, dialogue and conversation between them, or maybe there wasn't as much. Would you say that you had, a good reign of freedom to kind of how to approach these types of videos and audio?
Yeah, I would definitely say we had a lot of freedom. I think they realized early on that FALCON'S had put fans of the IP on the job. And when we sent them our first drafts, they were like, okay, you guys get it. You guys are referencing stuff that most people wouldn't even know, much less care about. And that's really cool. So they would always give us, the most important critiques are the ones that, from them. And that's the ones that we were looking for as writers. We're like, okay, we want to hit these notes, but like, if you guys have something to tell us to change, that's why we're doing this, right? For you guys, as much as the fans, we want to do it justice. So they were super nice. And there was a back and forth that was constant, but it was always a super positive back and forth. They were always like, yeah, keep going with this weird thing that you did, or this like inventive thing that you did, like, pushing more, into Gabriella and giving her this certain personality. Like that wasn't really established super concretely at the time we began writing. And every time we were like, let's push the envelope a little bit, they were 100% for it. So I couldn't ask for, a better, a relationship. It was really cool.
So do you consider yourself like an ongoing kind of Halo fan, or have you maybe just been a fan of the franchise for a couple years in the past, and it's just kind of been a great sort of time to get onto the project? Like, where would you align yourself?
Yeah, that's a important thing to note, I think, because I played Halo 1 for the first time when I was 7 on PC. I know that, the box says M, but
That's all right.
We all did, right?
I was pretty young as well.
Yeah, exactly. I skipped school to play Halo 2. So, like, I have been a fan since the very beginning. I played some of Bungie's earlier games too, like Myth and, Durandal and stuff like that. So I'm a huge fan. And that, for me, that was kind of why when the writing process began, I'm mostly a technical artist, an interactive designer, but I kind of jumped up at the chance and said, listen, I think that Abhinav needs help. I think he wants help and he wants this kind of backup. So I would love to do that for you. And then kind of internally, we were dubbed the Halo Guardians, which I thought was really funny.
Nice.
I'm an ongoing fan for sure. I like Halo 5 a lot. I play quite a bit of it. So it was just, a dream come true overall, for sure.
Was there ever a moment where you perhaps could have inserted yourself more directly into like the Halo canon, either being like one of the voice actors or being actually one of the live action actors?
Abhinav and I always talk about that, but I think we both agree that there's some things that are best left to the professionals. I will say that I did record a temporary voice recording, which is something we do a lot internally, for the drill sergeant of the combat deck, and I was yelling quite loud, and it was very, very fun because we have a recording booth in the studio, so no one else could hear me. But it was super fun to say those lines, and so maybe someday in the future.
Well, what is interesting, though, is because this event is canonized in a sense to where the guests that go are as it's supposed to be civilians kind of experiencing post-Covenant humanity, war and all that kind of stuff. And and you've and some of your other team members have given panels and stuff at the event. So you could even argue that type of presentation is they canonized.
You're all canon.
Exactly. That's what I would tell every guest who came up to me and asked me questions. I'm like, listen, you're canon now, and their faces, So yeah, you're very right. That definitely could be the case, and it's the best thing ever.
All right, so kind of now transitioning to the ring experience. Krysta, I'm not sure about you, but the ring experience was definitely the highlight for me.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That was the first thing I did. The doors opened and I ran right to it.
That's good. Awesome.
I took a moment to kind of take it all in while everybody was, because we got let in a little bit early for the press passes.
Perfect. Awesome.
And then once sort of the floodgates started to open, I was like, all right, time to go stand in line into the ring experience before the line gets too long. So just kind of jumping into it, the ring experience, then kind of the overall like museum-like sort of tour walkthrough is kind of similar to some of Falcon Creative Group's other work. Mm-hmm. Is this experience, is there anything in it that you found particularly like new or different or more challenging than some of the other projects in the past?
Yeah, I would say based on my own experiences, one of the things that was really unique was the live kind of moderators or the docents who would kind of travel with you and talk to you, and they were like historians. That was a really interesting thing that I don't think we were quite ready for. How I think that helped me, even when I was a guest and I finally got to experience it for the first time. It immersed me to have them kind of take us around and, introduce themselves, as the representatives of the UNSC. It's like that first time. If that's the first thing you're doing, you're finally seeing like people in costumes for the first time. And it's like, oh, wow, okay. This is it. This isn't just like a fun thing. This isn't just like a little silly thing. It's kind of deep. It's kind of serious. That was definitely a new element for us.
And that really does help bring the whole event to life, because you'll be reading about a little description about the Sangheili, and then a doctor or scientist will kind of come up and then just start, hey, do you want to know some more information about it? And then you just kind of hear just that, like credit to the actors, but then the writing, and it's just like it really does fully immerse you into this environment that I've just never experienced, because I haven't been to these types of experiences before. But that was something that I definitely wasn't expecting, and was very happy to kind of interact with.
Absolutely.
What would you say was the primary goal of the ring experience for the guests, and maybe how did that influence your writing and approach to that type of storytelling?
I think the ring experience, not only in the way that it was situated physically in the space, kind of being in the middle of everything, and not only in that way, but also from a narrative perspective, it was kind of your reintroduction or your brand new introduction into the Halo universe. Because a lot of people, for whatever reason, maybe haven't played because they've gotten older, they don't play the games as much, but they have kids now who are interested in the game. I've heard a lot of stories like that. Or, there's any number of reasons why someone may not be as familiar with the Halo universe. But I think that was the overall goal was, okay, bring them back in, but not just do that, fully show them things that they've never gotten to see before. And that was kind of the goal that we kind of kept saying, both internally and hearing from 343, was like things that you've never seen before, things that you've only read about in a book, things that you've only dreamed about, So that was the overall goal, I would say.
And I would say you guys accomplished that pretty spot on.
Cool.
Going through it, I was listening to Gabriella kind of giving the walkthrough and taking everything in. And a lot of this information I knew, but just
right.
the way it was presented to me, being a different way, it again with that immersion, and just very, very interesting stuff.
It's definitely like a good introduction to the entire experience. Halo Outpost. It's a great like first thing to go on to kind of get you immersed in what's about to happen as you walk around the event.
Yeah, that is true, because there are the other sort of attractions that you can go see, but to kind of really solidify yourself in the space, the ring experience kind of does that pretty well. Where did the OQ-55 Honeybee drone come from?
Cool. I'm glad you asked, because this is definitely one of the things we're most proud of.
I love it. I think when I saw it, I thought it made so much sense. And I have a side story about this as well that I'll bring up, but go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I'd like to hear it. So basically one of the things we do when we're designing is we like to, like you've mentioned before, we hit the narrative along with real world design philosophies. So because FALCON'S actually kind of specializes in large scale dome format videos, we were very familiar with this format, but we said to ourselves, okay, as fans, it just doesn't seem right to have a bunch of people standing up in a UNSC vehicle that's flying around. The UNSC wouldn't create a vehicle this dangerous for civilians. It just doesn't make sense. So we thought to ourselves about, military tech and how Halo always looks towards the future. And we thought, okay, narratively, let's figure out a way that when you're standing in this space, you completely feel like, okay, I understand why I'm here and why it looks the way it does. And that's where we kind of settled on the honeybee drone. And then another fun fact is that, as many Halo fans have figured out already, we called it the honeybee because it's in that same kind of line of vehicles as the Wasp and the Hornet, but it's not lethal. It's not meant for attack or aggression. It has no weapons on it, so that's why it's a honeybee instead of one of those more, aggressive insects. Or so that was a fun thing.
That's that's awesome. I love it even more now.
Cool.
So I was catching up on some Halo novels and stuff over the past couple of weeks, and I just reread one of the short stories from Fractures called Rossbach's World, and in that it kind of talks about the post Halo 5 aftermath, where the Guardians start popping up around the galaxy. One of the characters, the Admiral of Oni, Osman, she takes her AI and they kind of run away with all these other AIs. So they're secure because, Cortana's influence and all that. And they arrive to this random world that only BB, the AI, knows about. And so Osman's like, how'd you find this? And he goes, oh, well, there was a drone that found it. And I intercepted the drone and just, classified that to where only I knew about it. And so in my headcanon now, I just picture the honeybee drone
That's awesome.
As that type of vehicle that went and kind of captured this and then now continues this Halo story. So I kind of chuckled to myself when I read that the other day. But yeah,
that's really cool.
That's just what I think is so cool about just the Halo universe. And that's why Krysta, myself, and the other Evolve guys, we really love talking about it, because there's just so many ways it builds on itself and kind of retroactively kind of corrects itself as more things are brought into the universe. So the RDC, for the remote display capsule, that's a pretty new experience for Halo fans. And you kind of said Falcon's Creative Group uses that type of technology, not regularly, but in the past and all that kind of stuff. Was there a point that maybe you can describe to where it was like all the pieces were starting to come together, and you really took that step into the immersion, and it kind of took you away for the first time?
So I'm happy you brought this up, because one of the things that we do internally that I think has really helped this whole process is we use virtual reality quite often for just pre-visualization in a very unique way, I think, where instead of just sitting in a chair and watching the video and it's a 360 video, which is something we can do because that's effectively what we're creating is a 360 video, we instead create the 3D space and then we put that 360 video on an actual dome in the 3D space. It's in a game engine, so it's running in real time. That way you actually get to walk around. So you can see what every single guest from every single perspective would see when they're looking at the screen. And it was after that point that we were kind of midway through previs, and a lot of the sound effects and temp dialogue had been put in, and music as well, which was really fun to work with. That it was in that moment where in virtual reality I got to walk around that space. It was like, oh man, this is gonna blow some people away. Like I was getting emotional. So after that point I was like, okay, I gotta steel myself and then not get emotional until the real thing comes out. I can't have these fogging up these lenses in the VR headset. Anyways, so that was really the moment for me that it came together.
And then how was it when you finally walked through it in Orlando?
It was rough in the good kind of way, because we wrote a lot of these lines months ago, and then the museum part, like, it was actually really emotional for me to walk through, and hearing the Gabriella say everything, and so that was already pretty rough. And then when I actually got into the dome and all the color calibration had been complete, the sound calibration had been complete, and we watched it. I watched it with other guests for the first time, kind of incognito, and people were, gasping and saying things during the middle of it. It was really quite an incredible experience. Going
back to your sort of previs talk you just had, so did you and your team map out kind of the entire walkthrough and kind of like with the ring and the sentinels and the flood form. And so that way you're able to walk through the whole museum, getting like all leading up to the dome experience as well.
Not for that part.
Or is it's just the dome area?
Yeah, the previs is mostly for us to just kind of experience that main media piece. On other projects, we've definitely used it in a way to just kind of walk around a space that doesn't have media. But for this instance, we were pretty aware of how that circular inner ring was going to be that you walk through. So we weren't too concerned about it. But we were very concerned about how each guest was kind of going to experience the screen from whatever perspective they were, viewing it from.
I never would have thought of that, but it makes total sense that our kind of technology is allowing us to do that, to where you have these previs 3D environments that you can now virtually walk through to kind of map everything out. I can see, how for bigger projects you would definitely need to utilize that type of a previs. Are there any other types of insights or development stories you would want to share about the Ring experience or about overall of Outpost Discovery, or maybe some things you've talked about in the panels?
Yeah,
that I haven't touched on.
I think a big one, a personal hit for me that was just kind of like a yes moment, is when we got not just the okay, but kind of the request to put the blind wolf creatures and the sky leviathans in the film. Because I'm such a Halo fan that I went back and I found the Macworld 1999 demo where it was going to be a Mac exclusive game. And that's the first time the blind wolf creature showed up, or had shown up in a Halo game. And after that point, all of the kind of biology, the ecology of the Halo ring had been cut down so that you could have more creatures that you're shooting and, more combat kind of focused stuff. And as the years have gone by, you've seen that Halo's added more wildlife, more interesting stuff like that to kind of make it feel alive and alien and strange. And for them to say, hey, we want to pull this thing out from the archives and realize it at its highest possible quality was just like a real treat and an honor, I think, for everybody who worked on it.
Krysta, is there anything any questions that you may have that kind of relate to this? I have some post-mortem questions we'll get to in a minute, but didn't know if there's anything specific during your time at Outpost Discovery.
I really enjoyed the cutout of the Halo ring that was there, and it was really cool seeing the Sentinel in person. That was crazy. Also, thanks for putting handholds in the ring experience, because I almost fell over twice.
Yep. That's one of those things that you immediately feel when you do it in the VR version, is whoa, okay, this really feels like you're moving, which is a good thing. But yeah, we always try to make the guests feel as comfortable as possible. So I'm glad you appreciated that.
Oh yeah.
Now that the event is concluded for 2019, does Falcon Creative Group usually provide upkeep for their projects beyond their initial release? Because there's talk about Outpost Discovery kind of being an annual thing. So are these types of projects something that continue on your radar, or do you guys get it into a package to where it mostly sustains itself, or does it depend?
It really does depend on the project. That's unfortunately a thing I can't really talk about right now.
Ooh.
But that's neither a yes or a no. That's just the future. It is kind of freshly done, but I would say with any project in the theme entertainment industry, the moment it's freshly done is a moment for people to already start, thinking about, the future in general. And that's just a more general thought about themed entertainment.
Yeah.
So, it's always a good idea I think 343 will probably be your best source of news as far as future things go. And I think it'll be pretty cool. Halo's coming back in a big way. I'm really excited about that. Yeah.
I had the pleasure to speak with Howard Smith at the event in Philadelphia, and he's president of Hirsch and Lived. And we spoke, and I kind of asked him about the learning process from the event, and kind of how to take Orlando and build upon it for Philadelphia, and then how Philadelphia, builds upon it for the next, tour and all that kind of stuff. And this may relate a little bit to the last question, but, seeing how the Ring experience and audio recordings, are kind of set in stone, are there things, maybe not for Outpost Discovery, but for other projects, are there you guys go back and tweak things to make them better experiences? Like for instance, your underwater conservation project, like were there maybe feedback that was given that you may, try to enrich the experience for future views?
I would say that in the themed entertainment industry, for sure, that you see this kind of thing happen quite often, where things will change either with audio or visuals or even set decoration based on feedback. But on most of the experiences that I've been a part of, in a general sense, as much as I can say, we haven't really had that happen, because something I think that we strive for is to make sure from the beginning that it's working out in the long run, as far as that kind of delivery goes. But yeah, that's about as much as I can say on that.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I mean, it's interesting because I work in the film industry, and a lot of the times, once the product is released, that's it is what it is. But you have all this different hurdles in production and writing and all this other stuff that will change whatever you started with. But, only few movies, so to speak, will change kind of the cut of the film to fit whatever, you have like director's cuts and things like that. And that kind of gives different insight. So being in the, themed entertainment industry where you have this experience that you want to do I'm just kind of curious if, how malleable is that? Or is it mostly just kind of, we have the experience, this is what it is, and, we'll take feedback as needed, but mostly that's where it is now, and we kind of take that, what we learned, and push it to whatever the next project is, and kind of make that one as good as it can be. Mm-hmm. To kind of, give our listeners a good idea of kind of what just the themed entertainment industry does outside of just kind of going to Disneyland.
Absolutely. No, yeah. I think it's good that you brought up that you talked about this with Howard, because he is the kind of person, and his team are the kind of people who, especially on this specific project, they're the ones who really do have the ability to kind of make those changes to like how the queuing system works, or, all sorts of different things to make the guest experience better. And that is an important aspect of it for sure. So I think they did a fantastic job with that whole process. So it is. I'm glad that you kind of touched on that, because they're experts at what they do.
Yeah, definitely. And talking about it with him, he also just gets excited, and it's just really cool that I don't know how well he knew about Halo beforehand, but like you can tell that he's just passionate about his type of work and his team and all that, and then makes him passionate about the IP and really just wants the best that it can be for the fans, which is really heartwarming for fans, because a lot of different people love these sort of IPs and these attached to these characters and all that kind of stuff, and so to have the care, the same level of care in the creators is very reassuring and appreciated. So the kind of last question I have here is just kind of a little just more low-key personal. You went to Orlando and Chicago. Mm-hmm. And you were able to do your own sort of tour and walk around and see things, as well as do some panels.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you just like really enjoyed outside of just the overwhelming sensation and like maybe interacting with fans or seeing one of the other exhibits?
Yeah, I would say the thing that kind of hit me the hardest and was the coolest thing for me overall was the amount of families there. I'll try to make this story brief, but I was just eating in the cafeteria, taking a small break, and an older woman was there, and she started talking to me just because she felt like it. And then I came to learn that she was there because she used to read stories to her sons for bedtime, like it's so cute when they were younger, but they would always ask her to read Halo books too, which is great, right? So she's like, because we've been doing that for so long, I know a lot about Halo. So I was like, of course I'm going to bring you guys when this thing comes over. And I'm just like, this is a chance meeting. And then later they came to the panel and talked to me afterwards as well. And, I got to meet her two sons. And that was just like a really cool, just like moving moment. And the overall kind of vibe I got from both events was just an overwhelming sense of positivity, which is very, very welcome in today's world, So it was really nice.
Everyone everyone was so nice. Like, people are so nice at that event. I was just blown away. A lot of events, like, people kind of keep to themselves, but everyone was so open to sharing things. It was very nice.
Totally.
Yeah, I kind of found myself being a little bit more to myself until I started interacting with different fans and kind of opening myself up. And I was just like, holy cow, like, everyone's just like me. It's so great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, definitely, I think was a very successful event. I went to Philadelphia. Who knows what happened behind the scenes, but as far as I can tell from a fan, like, it was everything I wanted to be and more.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so thrilled to meet all the different 343 employees, as well as some of the other community leaders that I've interacted with online. So kind of meeting them as well was very rewarding. So,
yes.
Andreas, is there anything else you kind of want to touch on, or
if you don't mind me doing a quick plug?
No, of course.
For fans of Halo, we released a podcast, the FALCON'S Experience Imaginations podcast, and Oran was actually a guest on that, so that's one of the main reasons I wanted to mention that. Yeah, so we interviewed him as a fan, as a super fan and a content creator, wanted to know his kind of overall thoughts. And we did an episode on Outpost Discovery, and then we're I would say look to the future for maybe some more of that kind of content.
Yeah, and I think at the time of this recording there was like a part 1. Is there a part 2 coming soon, or is a part 2 already out?
Part 2 is in production right now.
In production. Okay. So, and then what's the name of the podcast again for the listeners to follow?
Experience Imagination Podcast.
So yeah, so find that. I listened to it on iTunes. I was fortunate enough to be on the show, and that's part of where this collaboration came from.
Yeah.
But Halo Canon, our friend Ian over on YouTube, he was also interviewed and had some insight about his sort of experience at Halo Outpost. So yeah, I definitely recommend you guys listen to it, and it does kind of go into more of the design aspects to kind of what we've talked a little bit about today, and then like Andreas says, there's more to come. So we're excited about that. Well, thank you very much, Andreas, for joining us.
Of course.
Like I said, he has his pod. Is there like a Twitter that do you do tweets or Instagram or anything like that, or Xbox Live?
Really. I have a Twitch that you can follow me at, Dandy Farge, which maybe you can link at. If not, cut this out. But yeah, that's the main thing I do these days.
Well, very good. Well, hopefully there's some Halo Infinite streaming in your future.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah. And on PC. Halo Reach on PC.
Yes. Oh. Is George dead?
Listen, that's something that we're all going to have to find out together, I think, right?
That's an ongoing debate in our community, especially among our leaders. So we do tend to ask our listeners, and it's our guests, and it's funny because we interview a fair amount of authors, and so when we ask that kind of question, they're always like, I don't know if I should say anything, because So thank you very much. If Andreas, if you want to learn more about us, you can find us at podcastevolve.com. Listeners, you can find more interviews of different Halo authors, as well as other shows that we produce on halopodcastevolve.com. We have different releases and community sections, and even our own lore section on there if you just have a question or interested in any part of the Halo history. We want to also thank all of our Patreons who donate to us every month. We make this show and want to make it better and better, and we use those types of support to do things like this and to go on trade shows and things like that. So thank you guys for that opportunity. And so at the end of all of our episodes, Andreas, we not scream, but we
scream
give
as loud as you possibly can directly into the mic. A nice
little like oorah or like cheers evolved. So if you want to join that with us, we're going to close out this episode. And until next time, everybody, evolved.
Evolved.
Evolved.